Hope you all had a good break, got some water, caught up, and now we are on to adult survivorship.
Hello, everyone. My name is Grace. I'm really excited to be moderating this panel. I was very honored to be asked. Just to kind of give you a quick overview about how we're going to do this is I'm going to introduce everyone really briefly, and then everyone kind of has some little points that they want to bring up at the beginning, maybe like 5 to 8 minutes, and then afterwards we'll open the floor for a Q&A, and so please come up to the microphones and ask your questions and we'll answer them. So yes, to start with, so my name is Grace. I'm a unilateral retinoblastoma survivor, and I'm originally from Arizona, but I'm currently living in San Diego, and I'm happy to be here with my mom, Lori, who was very involved with the Retinoblastoma of Arizona group for a very long time. And so I'm currently a Ph.D. candidate studying neuroscience at the University of California, San Diego. I'll start talking about our panelists. There's DJ Burzon. So DJ is a unilateral survivor. He is an assistant prosecutor in New Jersey. We're sad he's not able to make it and join us here in person, but he will be doing a live over Zoom for the Q&A, and we'll be starting with him at the beginning of the panel. So yeah, he'll be joining us live over Zoom. And then we have Kathryn Champ. She is also a unilateral survivor, and she's doing her residency in radiology at UCLA. We have Leia Hunt. Leia's also a unilateral survivor, and she's currently living in McKinney, Texas. Leia has turned her RB journey into activism, founding the childhood cancer organization Leia's Kids. We also have Zaakirah Muhammad. Zaakirah is representing the Bilateral survivors on this panel. She's the founder of the See Life Different Media and currently lives in Oklahoma. And then there's Genevieve McCarthy. So Genevieve is from Toronto and is a unilateral survivor, and she's the president of the Canadian Retinoblastoma Society, and very excited to be here. And then I'm the last panelist, but I already introduced myself. So I think we'll start with DJ, and he'll talk for a little bit, and then we're just gonna kind of go down, say a little bit about ourselves, and then we'll open up the floor. Okay, great.
Hey everybody, I'm DJ Burzon, as she mentioned. I am 34 years old, or will be in about a month. I live in New Jersey. I'm an assistant prosecutor. So that's just one little small thing, you know. I don't have any children, so I can't speak from the perspective of a parent, but I know that parents, especially of young survivors, wonder and worry about, you know, will this impact their education? I'm not the sharpest spoon in the shed, and I was able to get by, so don't ever worry. That, again, I can only speak for unilateral, so don't ever worry about your unilateral kid. We'll get by. So in addition to having turned into a lawyer, I like to think of myself as a little bit funny at times. And I want to kind of lead with that, a disclaimer almost, because you know, I deal with my life through humor. That's how I handle the trauma, and that's how I handle growing up different. You know, and so for me, that's good for me. That was how I handled things, and I'll talk a little bit more about it in a second. But I don't want anybody who is uncomfortable joking or laughing or finding humor in the situation to feel wrong or anything like that. That is okay. It's different things that help different people, and I live that life because, for example, my mother was my primary caretaker. My father was a med student. When I was diagnosed, or technically he was a resident. And it was actually Easter Sunday when I was 2 years old. My father noticed my eye was dull, and that obviously is not good. So he brought some friends over. They went through the medical textbooks, and they had a bad idea. And so they had an idea that it wasn't going to be good. So it took me to a pediatrician, took me right down to Manhattan the next day from Rochester, New York. And Dr. Abramson removed my eye 3 days later. And fortunately for me, you know, or I say fortunately, you know, I was okay. I was as a unilateral, we caught it early, we were able to enucleate, and I had no further issues. But that also means that I only have that one perspective. And so I can only speak from a unilateral's perspective, and I want to lead with that because there are things that I never will be able to understand. And and I'm going to circle back to why having people that understand matters. So I had said earlier about how my father and my mother have two different kind of perspectives or personalities, I should say. My mother and she's always laughed at my jokes about my eye. She's always been comfortable talking about it because my mom was the one with the boots on the ground when I was that little kid. My father was a medical resident, and so he wasn't around as much because he was constantly at school or work and trying to support a family. And so he didn't have to deal with a lot of the stuff, and he really only had to deal with the bad stuff. He didn't deal with the little in-between stuff. And so he never got to a point where he was comfortable laughing about things or joking. It wasn't until I was 30 years old, they're 29 years old, that he told his first joke. I can remember the day my father told my first, and it was fine. It wasn't a negative thing. I still laugh about it, and I love it. But my mother, on the other hand, because of the fact that she had to deal with this stuff, head on nonstop, she had a little bit different perspective. And so I think it's important especially this is really more for the parents and family and friends of survivors that are watching this, because it's very important to know that if it's okay to laugh, it's okay to laugh. Now, obviously, you have to know your survivor. You can't just, if you find out somebody's a survivor, you can't just walk up and lead with a joke. It's a very serious situation. But, within 3 minutes of meeting me, anybody who meets me knows that I'm an open book and I'm willing to talk because I wasn't always. And I think that's a very important thing to mention because when I was a kid, it wasn't that easy. I was suicidal by the age of 11. Kids were not cool, to put it simply. But I had somebody in my life who I can't imagine my life without him. And it happens to be my ocularist. My ocularist, Emery Benedict, is, in my opinion, the best ocularist in the whole world, ever has been, ever will be. I'm a little biased. But Emery also has one eye. So when I was at the lowest point of my life, my parents, I thought I was going to have my eye worked on. In reality, my parents knew that I needed to see Emery. I needed to get in that room with him, and he needed to know what was going on. And Emery sat me down and he said, look, I'm going to tell you 3 things, and they're very important. Having retinoblastoma, losing an eye, it doesn't change you, doesn't make you less. It doesn't make you any less whole, complete. None of all those feelings I was having, he just said, look, that's just not the case. In fact, the second thing is, I actually think it might make you a little bit more interesting. I think it's going to end up being very important for your character. And I think at the end of the day, you're going to view it as a positive, which sounded crazy at the time. And the third thing he said to me was, you're a pretty funny kid, DJ. You always have been. You've always cracked jokes. Because when I was in that room, I wasn't a weirdo. I wasn't unique. Me and Emery were 2 one-eyed buddies. And so he said, I think you can do that every day, because I think that that's going to be how you get by. And he was right. And so when I went to high school, I grabbed the bull by the horns. Obviously, grade school didn't get much better. Those are the same kids. But I went to high school and I said, hi, my name is Eyeball. I have one eye. Because I found that people, and I know that this is such a cliche. I can remember when I first heard it. It was a Full House episode when I was a little kid. He tells, I think it was DJ. He tells her, look, if they're laughing with you, they're not laughing at you. And I know that it's not the perfect solution to any of those very important issues, but it's true. I found that by making the jokes I wanted to make, creating the humor I wanted to create, it allowed me to buffer things, and it allowed me to explain myself to people before I had to have any of the negative interactions. And I think it's very important. But like I said, I think it's very important that I had Emery, because having somebody who could give me the same advice my parents did, because I'll tell you right now, and I'm talking to the parents out there, because I know that I gave my parents a hard time. And they did a very good job raising me in the face of difficult circumstances. But advice from somebody who you can't see as understanding, or it has not been through the same things, is not the same thing. I call it like the Charlie Brown effect. My parents could give me the best, most sage advice. The same words that Emery said to me, they said to me. It didn't matter, because it sounded like because they couldn't understand. They could not tell me I've been there. I've done that. I got the t-shirt. You will be okay. Things will get better. And so that's why I think it's very important. And I know that this can be viewed as a plug. Fine, call it a plug. But I think that one of the most important things going on right now in our community are the family meetups that We See Hope is organizing. Because I was 32 years old the first time that I hugged another survivor. And I can't even talk about it without crying. But I had already had people that I had met online, right? I thought that was sufficient. And I grew up in an age before social media and then after social media. So I got to see what it was like being a young kid with no friends and no peers to being a young adult who started to have some peers to now being an adult who has friends I can call. I can call Marissa. I can call my Claytonias. I have people that I can call. And I didn't think it mattered until I found out how much it did. And it truly does matter. So if there's ever an opportunity for you parents out there to get your kid somewhere, whether first of all, it can be me. I will have Zooms all day for the rest of my life if that's what it takes. I don't care. Find somebody because that's going to be it's going to be a game changer. The example I use, and this time I'm talking to my survivors and particularly my unilateral survivors, because I had a conversation with a friend that just put it all into perspective. It was the first time either of us had ever had somebody understand the feeling when you're walking towards somebody and you're looking at them, you're waving, hi, how are you? And they look over your shoulder because your fake eye's looking over here, and they don't know. That feeling, that smallness, it's the worst feeling I feel. And to have somebody understand that, I can't even express how important it was. And so I think that community is hugely important. And I think we are being presented with a bunch of great opportunities. I mean, I'm being here. The fact that I'm here talking to all of you is something that I could never have imagined when I was younger. It's something my parents could never have imagined would be the reality. But here we are. So I'm excited to be your resource. I think one thing, I think I'm probably burning through most of my time, but another thing that I think if anybody has any questions, and I'd love to hear other people's perspective, is on survivor's guilt as a unilateral. I call myself a hit and run survivor of cancer because I had a tumor, they took it out, and off I went. I've been fine ever since. Obviously, there's a lot of collateral things, but in the big picture of things, I'm okay. I didn't have to go through what a lot of the bilateral survivors had to go through. So I also want to make it very clear that anything I say that if a bilateral is looking at the screen like, what are you talking about? That might be true. I don't have your experience in my quiver, so I can only offer empathy and sympathy to that degree. But I think there's a place for all of us at the table. I think that there's an important role for all of us because I know that doesn't matter whether you're unilateral or bilateral, you feel different. And you go through things different than other people. So I'm just so excited to be a part of the community. If I can be a resource to someone, great. I'm not even going to pretend that I'm not looking forward to some of to taking back, to getting back, to getting advice and experience and new friends. So I look forward to the question and answer session. I haven't gotten a screaming text from Marissa, so I think I'm doing okay on time. But I'm just very happy to be here, and I look forward to speaking and hearing from the rest of the panel.
Okay, well, thank you so much, DJ. I figured we could just go down the table and basically do the same thing, and then again, we'll open up the floor to the Q&A. So, Zaakirah, do you want to start?
Okay. Hello, my name is Zaakirah Mohammed, and I am a bilateral retinoblastoma survivor. Location is mainly based out of Florida. That's where I received my enucleation and my second opinion of a diagnosis, Bascom Palmer Eye Institute. And I also was able to get it enucleated at the age of 9 months. So I was 6 months old when my mother got a second opinion about the diagnosis because the first pediatrician did not, the first pediatrician overlooked it. And then by 9 months old, I was able to get the diagnosis. And then later on down the road, this was about 93, later on down the road, I lost my hearing. I lost most of my hearing. I have a mild hearing loss, and I lost it due to the radiation treatment that I was able to receive. And so it's my left eye that I can see you in, and then my right eye and my right ear is more affected. So I am predominantly now, I choose the word of entrepreneurship, I choose the word of storytelling, I choose the word of media. I've been blessed to, my prosthetic guy doing what he wants to do right now. So I've been blessed to travel the world. I've been blessed to be a strategist where I also utilize my story through a book that my mom and I wrote together called Seeing Life Through a Different Lens, a survivor's memoir on overcoming adversity with resilience. And I was able to turn that into a podcast where not only am I interviewing other retinoblastoma cancer survivors like Miss Dorsey, the secretary of World Eye Cancer Hope, but I also just have conversations about overcoming adversity with resilience. I too grew up having dissimilar experiences as DJ, just being picked on and bullied for being 4 eyes, but I would also try to have a sense of humor and let people know that it's actually 3 eyes. So being able to, once I was able to overcome that and understand that, just because I'm different doesn't mean that I should be picked on. So I utilize it as a way to advocate for myself, and I will also tell people, hey, I can't hear you, please speak up. If you're willing to learn sign language, please use sign language. I'm in the world of digital media, so I'm often advocating for captions on online presentations as well. And then I was able to take that to a TEDx stage. So Seeing Life from a Different Lens is the name of the TEDx talk. And on that, I did talk about childhood eye cancer, but mainly talked about advocacy, how we can all be more empathetic towards one another. Just because I cannot see the way you see, I cannot hear the way you hear, and I experience the world through a different lens. That helps those who don't have retinoblastoma and don't have a child or a family member to truly understand what it's like to see in one lens. So also my advocacy, my choice of advocacy is also because I am an African American woman and I am a woman of faith, so I wear a head wrap or a headscarf on my head. So I choose to also have those conversations with those who look like me. So personally, I'm also interested when I do travel, I try to find the communities of those who are within the African continent, which you'll learn about a little later. And then, I'm trying to think what else it was. What was the question? What else was that? Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for now. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I am Genevieve McCarthy. I was diagnosed in 1985 with unilateral retinoblastoma, and I lost my left eye at about 8 months old at the Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto. My Christmas photos at about 6 months of age was what gave it away to my parents, that they recognized that there was something not right with my eyes. Similar stories to many other people. She was sent away numerous times, only to persevere as a mother knows best that something is not right with their child. And eventually, in February, after those Christmas photos, I had my left eye enucleated with no other forms of treatment. During the years of visits to the eye clinic, my mom sought out other parents in the waiting rooms and wanted to find support for herself and myself. She began to form herself a community, and her and I found comfort in sharing our stories and connecting with others. It gave me a sense of pride and acceptance of self to give to other families hope when they were faced with this tragedy in their own lives. They often wanted to know about simple things like sports and school and friendships, and I was able to give them reassurance. Over time, the community formed into the Retinoblastoma Family Association, where newsletters, conferences, directing research initiatives, fundraisers, and family events took place for many years of my life. When I was a teen and went into university, there were many years when I didn't want to identify with this community. I didn't want to see myself as different, and I didn't want to connect with those people who had similar stories to myself. During that time, the organization changed hands and became a registered not-for-profit charity. It was important that this framework existed to allow for future RB families and support in Canada to not have to start over, and with each opportunity for fundraising or other initiatives that this framework was in place. There have been times when our charity has been more and less active in the RB community, depending on many different factors. In 2020, after having my own children and recognizing the challenges in parenting, never mind adding the layer of childhood cancer, which neither of my parents have. Neither of my children have. I knew that I wanted to rejoin this initiative, now called the Canadian Retinoblastoma Society. Having the opportunity to connect with others who have had similar experiences is a unique and special honor for me. I look onto these children's faces when they realize that I get it, as DJ said, and it's quite amazing. We share a special bond, which fills my cup probably more than they know. Growing up around the RB community has very much given me a sense of acceptance and love. We share tips and strategies, responses to weird questions, and our worries as well as our fears. At the Canadian Retinoblastoma Society, we aim to provide a safe and secure platform for all of those impacted by retinoblastoma. We do this by hosting virtual and in-person events, including support-based, educational, and advocacy skill building. My favorite event is our family RB picnic every summer in the Toronto area. This past year, we had over 40 attendees, including adult survivors, children in active treatment, children who have overcome this disease, medical professionals, caregivers, and family members. It is important that we provide an informal environment for everyone to connect together so the children can understand that their doctors are just people as well. We work closely with other important organizations, such as the Ontario Parents Advocating for Those with Childhood Cancer, the Canadian Retinoblastoma Research Advisory Board, the One Eye Collective organization, IHESIV, We See Hope, Know the Glow, and many others. Collaborating with these types of organizations gives us the opportunity to see gaps in the support that's out there for us, as well as reaching and recognizing the needs from each other's stories. Recently, we were approached by some students in a media and production program at a local college to create a public service announcement, and we focused on recognizing the glow. So we are launching this new tool, and it is available for you all for the first time at this event. So I invite you to visit our website via the QR code that's on page 11 of your programs to watch and share on your platforms. It is about 2 minutes long, so you might want to wait until my fellow survivors have spoken. It's also on our website. You can join our membership to receive more information on upcoming events as well as finding support for yourself or your loved ones. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Awesome. So I just wanted to reintroduce myself. My name is Kathryn, and I am also a unilateral retinoblastoma survivor, and I actually am a doctor. So a huge part of my retinoblastoma journey is, tied to, or a huge part of my journey into becoming a doctor is tied to my retinoblastoma story. So I just wanted to kind of start from the beginning. So I am my parents' first child. I'm the oldest of 3 girls. And, when I was born, my parents were living in New Jersey at the time, and my mom worked in fashion. She was very, super proud of, me being her first child, and she loved photographing me. And as so many people have shared, my diagnosis was very much tied to being photographed and being seen as something was wrong with my right eye. So when I first was brought in to the pediatrician was at 4 months old. So I was very young when I was diagnosed, and they immediately knew to send me straight to Sloan Kettering, where I was seen by David Abramson, as many people I'm sure here were treated by him as well. And I had my eye enucleated, my right eye, when I was 6 months old. That was kind of the extent of my treatment. When I ended up, my parents moved to California, which is where I'm based now. I was followed at CHLA by the late Dr. Murphy. And my ocularist, it's so wonderful that he's here too, Mr. Haddad and his family, who have such an amazing business, family business, making wonderful eyes. But in terms of kind of my growing up, I always knew that there was something that was kind of different about me, and I was always very curious about what made me different. So kind of growing up, I always was asking my parents, questions about why I was different, and just continued getting curious about, what was wrong with me, what I went through, and that all kind of blossomed into me becoming interested in, medicine in general. And my parents did a lot of advocating when I was younger as part of the RB community. Some people who have been in the community for a while might know them. Katie and Sterling Champ, huge shout out to them. They're not here today, but love you, Mom and Dad. And so they did a lot of advocating, and part of that was getting to know all of the, specialists in retinoblastoma, and specifically, obviously, keeping in touch with Dr. Abramson, who was my doctor. And when I was kind of old enough to, start to learn more about my condition, they really encouraged me to actually keep in contact with Dr. Abramson. So when I was old enough to be able to even have an email address, they encouraged me to, correspond back and forth with him, to give him updates on my life and what I was interested in. And as I was kind of going through, middle school and early high school, and I started to get really more interested in science, they encouraged me to talk to him about wanting to get involved. And I ended up actually getting a summer internship to work at Sloan Kettering for a colleague of Dr. Abramson's in retinoblastoma. And that was what really just started my journey into medicine. I absolutely loved that experience, and I ended up actually working at Sloan Kettering for 5 consecutive summers in this research lab. And that ended up kind of helping me, want to get into medical school and want to become a doctor. And I always kind of knew that I wanted to work in the oncology sphere. I initially went to medical school intending on becoming an oncologist, and ended up finding radiology kind of later on in my medical school career, kind of 3rd and 4th year while I was figuring out what residency I wanted to go to, which is really funny when you think about it, because a radiologist, what we do is we read MRIs, ultrasounds, CTs. We rely so heavily on our vision and what we're perceiving in these scans. And as someone who has only one functioning eye, and my entire livelihood is based on, me being able to see these things and be able to diagnose conditions for patients, really, I think, goes to show that even if you go through something like retinoblastoma, you can really still be normal and still have, enough vision and I guess drive in my case to really want to make a difference and have a really great, fulfilling career in life in the future. So that is kind of what I have to say about that. In terms of, I guess, other ways that I've been, affected by my retinoblastoma, I had a little bit of an interesting experience in that I really did experience that a lot of my friends growing up didn't really ever know that there was anything wrong with me. I had several friends who I had been friends with for years, and it just, my retinoblastoma came up in conversation, and they would say, wow, I didn't know that about you, and I never knew that that was something that you went through. And I guess other things, the only really, way that I've been affected, heavily by my retinoblastoma is I get really scared when I'm behind the wheel of a car. I definitely have a car that tells me when someone's in my right side blind spot for sure, and I'm not that good at parallel parking. But, I just want to kind of put it out there that going through an enucleation and, losing this vision and only being able to see out of one eye, you really can have a normal life. And if anything, I will say that, retinoblastoma is a terrible thing to go through, but I am super grateful that it brought me to where I am today, because I wouldn't have probably become a doctor and been able to go into this amazing field and help other patients unless I had gone through this myself. So all I can do is be grateful for that.
Hello, everybody. My name is Leia, and I'm from the great state of Texas, so very excited to be here with all of you in Hawaii. Before I get started, I just really want to thank the foundation and Marissa and your board of directors and everybody and all the panelists up here for all your amazing and hard work. The morning has been beautiful, so just very thankful for this opportunity to be here today. I am a unilateral survivor. I was first diagnosed at 2 years old, and much like all the other stories we hear today, my mom, kudos to my mom, she saw the glow, and she saw the glow in a picture. And she took me to the doctor, which led me to another doctor, and he shut the door and he said, "This is the worst part about being a doctor, but I have to tell you that your little girl has a huge tumor in her left eye." And at that time, I was growing up in Ohio, a very small town in Ohio, and the next morning, my mom and my dad, we got on a plane and we flew to Wills Eye Hospital in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I started round 1 of chemotherapy with Dr. Carol Shields. And Dr. Carol Shields, my best friend. I know everybody says that their doctor's their favorite person, but she's really my favorite person. I always say you make it in life when you get a Christmas card from your doctor. And so she actually will be speaking at this conference tomorrow. And so I'm just so excited to just be in the same room as her again because she is such an amazing person. And so I started my treatment, and within a year, my cancer went away, and then it came back. And at that point, I lost the complete vision in my left eye. I did not have enucleation, so I still have my real eye. And every time people ask me about it, I just say it's kind of like a light switch. It's there, but it just doesn't turn on. It drifts, it's a different color, it has a little party of its own, but it just doesn't work, it doesn't turn on. And so these things really shaped my life. Being a young kid and growing up in the cancer community, growing up in the retinoblastoma world, and navigating life with one eye. And as I grew up, I went to my parents and I told them I want to do more. I really believed that I could find beauty amongst the storm and that there was a purpose to this journey and that God had me here for a reason. And so at 18 years old, I filed to become a nonprofit. So I started the foundation of Leia's Kids, and we help families in the fight amongst all childhood cancers and really bring in financial support, family days, mental health retreats, any advocacy and initiative that this family will need. And I really love to focus on the siblings, and I really love to focus on how we can advocate for them alongside of the patient, because siblings sometimes fighting cancer is doing the dishes so mom and dad can be at the hospital. And then really working with that patient on survivor guilt, something that DJ brought up. That's a real thing. And chemo brain. I mean, we're asking tiny humans to put drugs in their bodies that are made for big humans. And how can we help that? How can we be their voice? But then also giving the children the empowering words of me too. Having someone in a room and look at you and say, I had cancer too. Much like some people, I was 18 when I met someone else, not with retinoblastoma, but with another type of cancer. I was 18 years old when I met and made a friend outside of the hospital ward. Now I'm 24, and in June, I met a friend of mine who is a dear friend now, and she had retinoblastoma. And I can tell you, as a young lady and as an adult, that was one of the most life-giving moments I had. So to be in a room with so many people who can hear the words "me too," who I can relate to, be like, hey, when I drive too, I have like a really big mirror, and like everyone's like, why is your mirror so big? And then I'm just like bebopping around town saying like how helpful it is. Or when your cars beep, like the most helpful thing ever. You have no idea. Driving is very difficult. But to add to that, we can have a normal life. And it takes time. It takes having questions. It takes sitting down with a family member. I remember one time I sat down with my older brother and he explained to me in depth different things, different side effects. I had those questions of why. Because as a little girl, when you face something so young, you think it's normal. A pivotal moment I had as I was driving, well, I wasn't driving because I was like 10, but my mom was driving and we were at a red light and we lived on a ranch in Ohio. And so my sister, She said, Leah, what do you want to name the horse? We were getting a horse. We loved horses. We were so excited. What do you want to name the horse? I said, I want to name the horse Cancer. Because to me, everybody had cancer. It was so normal. And so, but without those hard conversations, without those good conversations, without people like Dr. Shields, who still stays in contact with me, who we email and send Christmas cards, and she just had her first grandbaby, and she has 7 kids, and just being able to have those relationships inside of a community when something is so hard and something is seen in such a negative light, but being able to feel inspired and be able to have that hope, to me, that is life-giving. And so that's what I hope I can bring to the table today, this weekend, through Leah's kids, through working with so many other pediatric warriors here, and really advocating on a state and federal level for advocacy, research, funding, and working with people across different states. So thank you so much for having me today.
All right, hi everyone. My name is Grace Padilla. I'm 26 years old and I currently live in San Diego, California. I'm a unilateral multifocal retinoblastoma survivor. And then since we were talking about genetics earlier, I just wanted to bring it up. I got genetic testing when I was 19 and found out that I was genetic mosaic. You never really finish your retinoblastoma story just when you have your eye enucleated. If any parents or kids want to talk about that later, I'm more than happy to. But my journey started when I was 2 years old. So it's great that everyone's moms found their eye cancer. My dad actually was the one who noticed with me. He saw me in a living room and he saw a weird glint in my eye, and he's the one who told my mom, hey, I think something's wrong here. And so we ended up going to the doctor, and then they referred us to someone else who then had that conversation, closed the door, was like, I'm so sorry to tell you this, but your daughter has cancer. And then very swiftly after that, and I'm sure a lot of really hard decisions that my parents had to make and debate between, but my eye was removed in October of 2000. So I'm almost 24 years cancer-free later this month, woo. Thank you. And that kind of began, my journey of having monocular vision. I think similar to DJ, I really didn't want to have kids trying to figure out what was wrong with me. It was just not something I wanted to deal with. So my approach was not necessarily introducing myself as someone who had one eye, but I would bring my prosthetic eyes to show and tell when I was 6 years old, and I was like, okay, I want to be the first one, and I'm just gonna tell everyone the situation here. You can ask me questions. There's no need to beat around the bush. I have one eye, and so I think I really kept that approach throughout elementary school, and I didn't, middle school came and I was like, I'm not gonna really overly share this, but I was always really open about having a prosthetic eye because I thought it was important. When I was really little, I forgot to mention, I was treated in San Diego at Kaiser Permanente, but when I was 7, we moved to Arizona, and that's when my mom reached out and she met Colleen Crowley, who had started the Retinoblastoma for Arizona, RBAZ, which is a really great community for families in Arizona whose children have been, or parents were diagnosed with a retinoblastoma, and you can come together and form a community. So I actually was really fortunate to meet other children with retinoblastoma from a really young age. And I think when I was 7, I think we were just all kids hanging out, and I was like, this is really cool just to meet other families. I think it served as a really great system for my family to talk to other parents. I think when I was super little, I didn't totally realize the value of it until I got older and stayed in touch with multiple people, how much easier it was to be able to have conversations where you can just go back and forth between being in middle school and talking about things you talk about in middle school to then being oh yeah, and then I'm having this weird thing with my prosthetic. Have you ever had that? I think that was really valuable to have throughout my childhood. I also went to places like Camp Sunshine, which is really great. I think there was a while where having a prosthetic eye was really difficult for me, and I didn't know how to take it out when I was a kid, or I was nervous to take it out because I didn't want it to hurt, and I had a really big prosthetic, and so it's a lot to try and take out an eye as a 9-year-old, but having older people who were there who were able to show me those experiences, see that they could really live a very normal life, and it wasn't it is a big deal, but it wasn't a big deal to take out your eye. That was those were really big moments for me. And so, I mentioned earlier that I'm currently doing my Ph.D. in neuroscience. I'm not studying anything related to cancer or retinoblastoma. I look at how your nervous system creates fear, and I use fish to do it. And I think that probably like being in the hospital a lot as a kid and being surrounded by doctors had a big impact on that. I don't think there's any way to really know, but I do know that I was always really curious as a child, and I was always trying to like figure out like how things were working. And so one of those things when you like only have one eye, you're like, how do people with two eyes see? Do they see two of everything? And I really did think that. And so one time my mom like sat down in a chair and I was like, how did you do that? There's two of them. How did you know which one to sit in? And my mom was like, oh, no. And so that was like a crazy experience to learn that like two eyes, two visual inputs then converged into one, and your brain did that. And I think that's what really got me excited about science. And so I was like always like really curious, but I was also, I did a lot of music in high school, so I like went into college kind of being like, I'm gonna be a singer, and I wanna do this. And then I took my first neuroscience class, and I was like, oh my gosh, the brain is so cool, like, and just completely like changed the idea of like what I wanted to do. I still did like do a degree in music, which was really great, but I ended up switching it to neuroscience, and I got really excited about like, how does our brain work to then effectively interact with the environment so that we can do things like this. And so from that point on, I started doing some research in college, and I was working with leeches, weirdly enough, but leeches are quite small, and I had to do surgeries on them. So I would have to open them up, and I had to do all of this under a microscope. And I remember when I was trying to begin doing my research experience, the professor that I was working with was just like, I don't know if you can do this with one eye because you don't have any depth perception. And it was a great point. Like I had no idea. But I was like, well, we won't know unless we try. So you might as well just like teach me to do this surgery. Let's see how it goes. And spoiler alert, I was able to do it. Thank you. And I don't know if it maybe took me a little bit longer to learn than someone with binocular vision. I don't think there's any way to really know that, but I was able to successfully do it. But there were multiple moments like that within like my education journey where people were like, I don't know if you'll be able to do this. And I was like, okay, well, like, I mean, I can drive like all of us here can, like, and I can parallel park. But like we won't know until we try. And so I had a lot of like things in my way where just people like really doubted if I was ever able to do it. And I was really fortunate that my parents never told me that there was anything I couldn't do. If they said that there was something that I was like really worried about being able to do, they would just might be like, hey, it might just take you a little bit longer to learn. And that really came involved with like sports and everything. I cannot catch a ball. Like, like it's coming towards me, I'm going over here, it flies that way. I'm like, okay. So I learned pretty quickly I wasn't good at sports that involved like three-dimensional flying objects because that was really hard. But I am really an active person. I love hiking. Learning how to hike downhill was actually like really difficult for me because there would be like a rock and I didn't know how long the step was to get down. But over time I was just able to do that, and like it just took a lot of time. I was asked to talk a little bit about like education resources for people with one eye who might need like a little extra time. So I just wanted to say that like throughout like my education journey, their universities are really good about making sure that there are resources for people who might need extra time or who might need accommodations for like visual or hearing issues. So I do want to state that like if your kid like is worried about that going into college, that there are plenty of resources and opportunities for that. It is their job to reach out to the professor or reach out to the proper organizations to make sure that people know, because there's no way to know unless you inform them. But I did want to say that like I've been fortunate not to have to need those, but I know people who have, and they're really useful, and they do want to make sure that you are able to get as good of an education experience as possible. I think that's all I have to say right now. Thank you. to open it up to a Q&A?
Yes, same as previous. If you want to make your way to the front, if you have a question, we have one to start us off from Mary virtually. She's wondering if any of the presenters on this panel can speak to how they deal with issues of secondary cancer risk if you have an RB1 mutation.
I can start. So yeah, I found out that I was genomosaic about 7 years ago. So I don't totally know exactly like where that mutation is within my body, but my mom was always like very aggressive about me wearing sunscreen. So that was like something that I did independent of knowing because just the possibility of having melanoma or getting melanoma more easily. And then I also go to a dermatologist yearly and get skin screenings for that, just in case it's an option.
I guess I can speak to the same thing. I am a unilateral survivor, but it has always been impressed to me that I'm mindful of exposure to radiation that's unnecessary. So any x-rays or ultrasounds that were being performed, I always really needed to heavily question whether they were necessary. Things like sunscreen and monitoring. So I guess one piece of advice, as I do meet with a lot of families, even though I'm not a genetic carrier myself, I do know that you need to be a strong advocate. You need to be for yourself and for your child to say, these are our concerns, this is what I've been told, and I know we are blessed with Dr. Galley to give us letters in Canada that will advocate for our need for additional screening and additional testing. So if you are questioning your secondary cancers or any other issues, you should be an advocate and impress to your doctor that you need additional screening.
I'm Lauren Selvig from Austin, Texas. Hello. My son's a survivor, unilateral retinoblastoma. I just wanted to ask about the implant behind your prosthetic. Have y'all had to undergo multiple surgeries as you've grown? Multiple prosthetics? Any issues with that?
So obviously, disclaimer, my experience is my experience, might not be the experience of everyone else. But basically, my kind of prosthetic journey has pretty much been, every couple of years I go and get fitted for a new prosthetic because obviously as we grow, the size of our, orbit changes and, our eye color changes, and all of these things kind of need to be reflected as you grow and, be reflected in your new prosthetic. I have never had any further surgeries after my initial enucleation. I'm not sure if anybody else has any experience with any additional, more advanced prosthetics, but
go ahead.
but my prosthesis is just essentially like a little kind of curved disc. It doesn't really move as much as my normal eye, but I've had people tell me that it moves enough that it's hardly noticeable. Yeah, that's kind of my experience with it. I don't know if anybody else.
I'm not on the panel, but I am on the board. Cleonia. Interesting question about the implants, because right before the pandemic, I had an implant change surgery. That was, I'm giving away my age, that was 50 plus years later. I still had my original implant, and it was so tiny that they couldn't find or see the implant. So I actually needed to have an MRI in order for them to find the implant. It was something that my ocularists had been advocating for years and years and years, because I had a really big prosthesis, and they were like, oh, implant change and surgery changes. And so I did have the implant changed. The prosthesis became much smaller. However, the pandemic hit. So I still need to have 2 more surgeries, at least, lower lid and upper lid. And I shouldn't say this. You guys don't know my sense of humor, but I said, and then I was going to become part pig because they were going to use a bovine graft in the lower lid. So the pandemic I was on a roll, and the pandemic shut everything down, and then I got some additional health challenges. So I am supposed to have 2 more surgeries, but all of that 50 years after my surgery. Just wanted to add that.
I have had 3 major surgeries. So I had my initial enucleation, and then the implant had sunken down. There was a fatty deposit, and it had kind of fallen back. And so it was really difficult for an eye to stay in. It kept coming out at the bottom lid, and we had a lot of difficulty getting a good fit. So I had that replaced when I was about 6 years old, and I had an excellent fit, and everything was good for a number of years. And then I decided, because I was diagnosed in '85, and we weren't attaching muscles at that time, so I have no movement, and I wanted to achieve movement. And so I was about 20 years old when I advocated to my parents heavily that I wanted to have a hydroxyapatite implant, which is a coral, as many of us are probably familiar with. The idea is that it would become a part of my body, and the veins and arteries would grow through it, and I would achieve movement. Things would be attached. So I had the hydroxyapatite implant put in, and the movement didn't happen. So my body tried to reject that implant a number of times. I still have that implant in, and my body has adjusted over time, but it didn't end up achieving the results that I wanted. And I appreciate your question about prosthetics, because as you will see, I'm wearing my sparkle eye. And it's taken me 40 years to be comfortable to fly my difference flag in this way. So when I initially went for the special eye, thank you. It's, I find, not a popular choice in our community yet. I think that as children, we recognize that vulnerability is really hard to adjust to. And I wanted to be normal. I wanted a real eye. So I would have never chosen to put my vulnerability out there in this way. Now that I'm grown and I don't care the same way, and I want to own my needs and who I am, I control the narrative now, and people don't question my eye the same way that they did. As DJ mentioned, like, it is really painful when you're making eye contact with someone and they look around themselves like, who are you talking to? Or I can tell that while I'm talking, their brain is going, what is wrong with her eyes? Right? And you can tell that they're not focused on what you're saying, they're thinking what's happening with her eyes, right? So now that is not a thing, and now I'm just, this is what it is. So it's taken me a long time to get to this point, but I'm very much an advocate for this style because it has completely changed the way I feel about it. And I often still go into the grocery store and think in my head, I'm wearing a sparkle on my face, and my heart grows, like it feels really heavy. And I expect people to be mean to me because that's what my fear is. But that's not happened at all. I've been wearing it for about 6 months, not always, but pretty often. And it's very empowering. And I've had nothing but positive feedback of people wanting to know more and asking me good questions. So I appreciate the question about the prosthetic because I think it's a newer age development as facial piercings and tattoos and more things are becoming accepted. So is flying your disability flag in the same way.
Hi, I'm the mother of Zaakirah. This question is for all of you. The issue of removing the prosthetic eye when you're less than 2 years old becomes very stressful for the child. My experience was my child said I was heavy-handed, that every time I took it out and put it back in caused her grief, and she learned, the ocularist taught her how to do it herself. But later on, conversations with the medical professionals, my question has always been about the psycho-emotional conditions of the child as the child matures. I don't think there's anybody in here who would say it's not PTSD. That as you grow into an adulthood, you become sensitive to other people's issues because of the trauma that each individual has been through. And so that's my question. Do you relate to any of the trauma in your life as post-traumatic stress?
I can start with that, and I would say that my answer has definitely been yes. There's different aspects, and I know World Eye Cancer Hope has definitely had a blog post on this, that there are different aspects of PTSD that show up in the isolation, in the choice to not interact, in the way that we just want to go into a total shell. So the PTSD has shown up in the ways of realizing that we are different, and how do we adapt to this different life of driving with one eye, traveling with one eye, and then also until we're at that age and that maturity to be able to find the words to say that we're different and we're okay with that. Yes, I agree. It is PTSD.
I guess we'll go down the line here, but yeah, I can definitely relate to that. It's probably been a difficult thing to accept in my life, as my parents presented this as not a negative aspect, as that, I've thrived, I've done well, I'm, able and active and all of the things, but I think there is a lot of truth to the challenges and validating for the child that there are hardships that come with these experiences as well. I know that even though my mind may not always identify and agree with the challenges, my body always reacts and responds to things in my environment. So if I have to have medical treatment, or if I'm going into a procedure, even just simple things, naturally I will shake, I will start crying, I will go into these really difficult physical responses. Even though I know I'm safe and I know I'm okay, my body reacts very much so. So I just advocate and I explain to people that I'm medically impacted and that this is the way that I handle things, and I'm going to need some extra patience and time during these things.
I may have a little bit of a different perspective, just as someone who I guess is so used to being in the medical sphere as a physician myself. I think because I was treated so young, and the fact that this is kind of all I've ever known puts me in a little bit of a different space. And I always was very much kind of encouraged to still do everything that I'm still able to do, everything that I want to do. So I didn't, I guess, assign as much kind of negativity to it, perhaps. When I was experiencing, for example, I really resonated with the sports discussion for sure. Always being forced to wear these big, ugly goggles because I needed my one good eye to be protected. That kind of was a sore spot for me growing up as a kid. But I think in general, I see everything that I've gone through as kind of a positive of that's gotten me to where I am today. And so maybe I have a little bit of a different perspective in that way.
So I can't speak exactly to having enucleation since I did not have one, but I can speak about the two battles that this journey has you on. I've always said, when we're in this fight, there's the during, and then there's the after. So while you're through treatment, while you're being bombarded with new information and experiencing it firsthand, you also have the after effects. When the spaghetti dinners stop and, people have moved on and it's you versus yourself. And you're sitting in your bedroom and you're looking in the mirror and it's you versus what you see. And it's that mind game, it's that headspace of, okay, what are you gonna do? because you are your biggest advocate, you are your biggest voice, but then also when you're a tiny human and you're trying to figure out middle school and you're trying to figure out if people are looking at you or are they looking at your eye. And I can tell you that's a real thing. So I have a bachelor's in education, so I taught first grade, and even as the teacher in the room, my kids, I would look directly at them and they would turn their head and look behind them, day in, day out, the whole school year. All the time. And so that was just something that always brought me back to feeling like a little kid that was sick. But it was a journey that I had to that I was on, and I had to really work through and being like, hey, it's okay to wear your scars on your face. It's okay to wave your disability flag. It's okay because it's part of your story and it's part of who you are. And yes, I have flashbacks from a kid here and there. Yes, I don't like orange soap because it reminds me of chemotherapy. Yes, I have all my stuffed animals every single time I got treatment that Dr. Shields gave me. But those are all things that, yes, take me back, but also empower me to be, it's okay. And you take it day by day, and you have to find your new normal. And that is what helped me. I heard someone in a talk one time, they said, you have to find your new normal because your journey is not someone else's journey. So what works for you may not work for them. So do what you can for yourself and advocate for yourself, but then also give yourself grace and be okay. And that's what's helped me the most.
Just before I answered, I wanted to see if DJ wanted to say, and then I can end this part of the question. So DJ, do you want to go?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I actually have a slightly different answer, but it's about the acute aspect of PTSD. Because I know that there are probably going to be some parents in the room or watching who have a very hard time with that process of taking their kid's eye out, the young kids, the 2-3 years old. My mother was very traumatized by the process because I was not an easy kid. And she would have to sit across my chest and hold me to the ground at 2, 3, 4 years old in order to get my eye out. And for her, that was very traumatic. And I don't even know what the impact long-term has been on her. But I do know that if you're one of those parents who is dealing with a kid who you have to wrestle with and you're worried, I'm here to tell you, again, only one data point. This is just my life and my story. But I can tell you right now, I don't hate my mother. She's my favorite person on the whole planet. She didn't mess me up. I think probably the only direct impact I can say from that whole process is I can't put eye drops in my good eye. I cannot put anything anywhere near my good eye. My body physically shuts that thing, and I have to have somebody else assist me to hold my eye open if I'm going to put drops in. And to be honest with you, I don't have it very often. I don't need to put anything in my good eye, fortunately. But that's the only tangible impact from what I know presented as incredibly traumatic. If you were to look back, because I can remember 2 or 3 of those, of my mom sitting on my chest. I can remember, I can't imagine what my mom had to go through in those moments as, somebody in her late 20s with a kid that she's sitting on to pull his eye out. I can't imagine. But what I can say is 25 or 30, whatever, many, many years later, here I am. I adore my mother. I'm okay. I'm somewhat well adapted, but it's not because of that. And so that's, I think that's one thing that needs to be heard. If you're one of those parents who is like, what am I doing to my kid? Are they going to hate me? Is this going to mess them up forever? Am I doing it wrong? All those questions, I can tell you right now, it can be okay. And it can be something that they end up looking back on and chuckling a little bit here and there. Every once in a while, I'll ask my mom if she could take my eye. I'll be like, take my eye out for me real quick. And her face is, no. But that's about it. So I think as far as the direct impact, I don't know if that was the question, but I know it's something that my mother has always talked about being traumatic for her and wondering about the long-term aspect of that. And I can tell you right now, you're doing your best. You're doing fine.
All right, I'll just take a moment to answer the question from my perspective. I think that I have never considered it to be PTSD for me. I think that, it happened to me so young. I don't remember what it's like seeing with 2 eyes. don't know what it would have been like to be in middle school and have had two eyes. I think that like in middle school, and I think as human beings, especially in today's society, we're really programmed to try and look for the faults within ourselves when we look in the mirror. I think as a human species, we're not meant to look in the mirror the way that we do. And so I don't know for me if looking in the mirror as a middle schooler and seeing, the prosthetic eye on my face, if I wouldn't have found something else that would have also just been like another big insecurity for me. And I think that's something that like we have all experienced on the panel, where like, you're trying to look as normal as you want, or you don't want people to notice, and then someone will either say something or you feel like it's so obvious what it looks like. But in actuality, like, what I've learned throughout like my life is that most people are like more concerned about what they look like than what you look like, and I think that's been like a really helpful thing to like get me through. But to talk about like when you were mentioning like the kids and stuff, I do a lot of outreach with kids where I'll like go and present in classrooms, and I'll be telling them about all these cool things about the brain, and there's always like one kid who comes up to me and he goes, "What's wrong with your eye?" And I'm like, okay, I'll tell you. Like, I'll explain the situation. Kids just like know. And like, I'll talk to a bunch of adults and I'll end up sharing my story, and they'll be like, "I never would have noticed," like all this stuff. Like, but like a 6-year-old will know. Like, I don't know what it is about them. Like, people, like, do you realize, like, they have no shame in asking you, and you're like, okay, well, maybe we can ask this question a little nicer. Like, let's make this be a teaching moment. So I think it's hard for me to like know whether or not like what other insecurity I guess would have taken the place of it. And I'm not trying to minimize the way that like having one eye or both eyes enucleated, or just having like looking something like atypical on your face, that like that effect it can have on you. I don't think I've ever viewed it for myself as that, and it's just kind of something that happened, and it is what it is. Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Ashwin Malapatna. I'm one of the ophthalmologists that treat children with retinoblastoma, and I guess my question to you is manifold. I can't do eye drops in my own eye. I can't catch a ball as well as most people can. But I'm just wondering, being told that you can't do something obviously affects how you go into this, and obviously there's a lot of bias that's projected in a way to say what people sighted with both eyes can do and people sighted with one eye can do. I guess, do you have any place that you can recommend that we can go to as physicians, so we can then tell new parents that this is where you have to go to know the stories of what somebody sighted in only one eye can do? Also have a question after this, but I'll finish this question now, and I'll ask another one after.
I've got a good answer if you guys can hear me. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
So my parents, when they were speaking with Dr. Abramson, and they were making the decision as to whether or not they were going to pursue some sort of treatment, or if they were just going to pursue immediate enucleation, obviously that was their question: what will my son not be able to do? And the answer they got is so important for everybody to hear, because it's true. The only thing they said to my parents, the only thing that your son will not be able to do is be a cop, a firefighter, join the military, or be a commercial pilot. And that is the truth. Those are the only 4 things I have found in my life that I cannot do. I can't do everything as well as everybody else, but I can do anything anybody else can do, except for pass something that requires a vision test, because, hey, look, the military's not letting me in, I tried. The police won't let me in, I tried. Firemen, you can kind of be a volunteer firefighter, but I wanted to be a paid firefighter. But those were the only things that I cannot do. And I think that, I don't know, I mean, maybe somebody else is going to have something on this panel that they couldn't do, but I can't imagine, I can't think of anything anything else on that to add to that list that I can't do. And I think that's an important answer because it was such an important thing for my parents to hear. And they had to believe that. They had to take that as a fact that they didn't have anybody to ask. And I'm so happy that I've been able to show them that was true. I've been able to do everything else since. I hunt. I can shoot a gun just fine. Took a little bit of practice. I'm a little bit better than some people even. But those are the only things that we cannot do. So you can send them that short list. I'll put it on a T-shirt.
Yeah, I can say something. So I think that a really great resource to give parents would be any of the organizations that we've mentioned up here today, where they're survivor support groups and family support groups. I know there's Facebook groups as well. Putting them in contact with those supports, I think someone will ultimately end up reaching out and helping so that they can get a sense of maybe more of the day-to-day life. I agree with DJ. I don't think that there is anything that you can't do aside from the specific jobs that he listed, which he is correct. Except for I wouldn't spend money to go to a 3D movie. It's not really. I really don't think that that's worth it. I remember the Katy Perry movie came out in 3D, and I went, and I was like, this was not worth it.
I have a follow-up on that. What about virtual reality goggles?
My experience, it just feels like I'm looking at a TV. An immersive TV. But yeah, I mean, you can still interact with it. Something that I experienced, I knew someone who was doing research using eye tracking, and they use both pupils to track eyes on a screen. And since I had a prosthetic eye, the eye tracking couldn't catch one of my eyes. So I just commented that in the research study. I was like, this doesn't work for people with one eye or prosthetic because it used red infrared light to use the glow from the from your retina or something. I don't know. But it didn't work for me then. So I think maybe some visual eye tracking software could be more difficult. But I don't know. Does anyone else have anything they want to add?
I want to piggyback on that very specific point, actually, because it is not, hopefully it's not relevant for very long, but that problem specifically was a very real problem for some people, fortunately not for me, because I took the bar exam. To be a lawyer, you have to take a bar exam. It's our boards. And during COVID, they switched to an online iteration. And there were people failing the bar exam as cheating because they were using eye tracking software. And those of us with one eye, that was the issue. It was picking up as if one of the eyes was staring in a location that was quote unquote not approved. And so they ended up being able to fix that relatively quickly because the need ended. But if your child is ever in an educational setting where they are using online software to verify whether they're cheating or not, your child needs to have a conversation with the facilitators about doing some sort of test with that specific software to make sure that their results are not going to be flagged as cheating because their eye is not moving.
Yeah, and I would love to jump in on this. I think to go off of what he's saying about the school setting and being able to get your child that IEP or that 504 plan to, I was that child who had to sit in the front of the classroom. I got enlarged notes. I had PowerPoints printed out for me. I had an aide, and when you had to go and fill the bubble in on A, B, C, D, and you circle the bubble nice and dark to make sure nothing came out of that line, my parents had in place for me to have assistance with that, and so that one was very, very helpful. You could really see the side effects of my treatment during the school a day and through migraines and taking those notes. So that was something that would have been very helpful if we probably would have known before. But again, the school system and the education system has changed so much. And then also, my parents never limited me. They let me go play basketball. I played basketball for years. Was I good at it? But my mom and dad never limited me, and my siblings never limited me. They always empowered me. If I wanted to play basketball because I loved it, I could. Did I miss the ball? Yes. Am I really bad at tennis? Yes. But I was never put in a box, and that was very helpful. And then another thing is my mom got me a book that she found, and this book had steps for someone with one vision to take for something like shaking a hand. And when I first started learning of age to shake someone's hand, I always missed their hand. And I would get so nervous. I used to sit on my bed with my dad, and we would practice shaking hands because that was something I really struggled with. And so the book walked me through, like, okay, so you actually want to put your hand a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right. And so little things like that are helpful to have, that you can be like, oh, here's some steps on how to do it. Here's steps for school, for shaking hands, for driving, for hiking, because that's a real thing too.
Would you say the name of that book for somebody who might want to read that even though they're 33 years old?
Yes, I will send you the link.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
Shaking hands, by the way, for those of you who are with their survivor. Shaking hands, I guess I'm glad to know that I'm not the only person that sweats at the thought of shaking somebody's hand in a fast setting, because I'm gonna miss. I'm gonna whack them in the side of the thumb. I'm gonna give them the overhand, the underhand. My heart is soaring to know somebody else is there with me.
Yes, I feel you. It's a real thing.
I'm monocular visioned as well, and I would just like to add VR, virtual reality goggles and glasses, and also putting toothpaste on your toothbrush.
Oh, you're so right.
And going down steps.
Oh, yes.
I go like this, guys. And that's my goal, my aim. So I'd like to know what your take-home messages would be for us as today. What would your one key take-home each would be, if we've got time later? Thank you.
One key takeaway from today. One key takeaway from today. One key takeaway from today. That you can do it. Have hope. You can do it. Parents, you're doing a good job. You are your child's biggest voice. You are on the battlefield with them. You're in the trenches. You are the person that the medical staff is going to. Give yourself grace. Pat yourself on the back, because at the end of the day, we're all learning. We're all in an unknown world. No one woke up and said, I'm going to know everything about retinoblastoma today, just in case I have a child with it. You know, you are doing the best that you can. So for all the moms and dads and siblings out here that are in this, know this wasn't a community that we wanted to enter into, but we're in it, and lean on each other. Have hope. Take it one day. Give yourself grace and find what works for you. So that would be my one key takeaway.
Sorry, can I ask my next question?
Oh,
Just
yes.
a quick follow-up. As an eye surgeon, anytime we do something like this, it's obviously very recommended that we suggest, and please don't take this the wrong way, this is going to be a little controversial, but we would always suggest that we give safety glasses. But the panel here has 40% of the safety glasses missing. So
I do have them. I just don't wear them all the time.
I have them too.
Yeah. I'm just wondering. Should I continue doing that? If I should, how do we succeed in making it happen? And if we don't succeed, should I just give up?
So, I wore glasses until the age of 18 solely for protection. I didn't have any vision problems with my good eye, but my parents demanded that I wear them for protection. I had several instances where I had more damage done to my eye area from the glasses than I did from the ball, the soccer ball, the whatever it was that hit me. And so I found that depending back then, when my option was really just either rec specs or regular metal glasses, that I didn't necessarily, and again, obviously, like you said, this is my personal experience based solely upon what I've been through, but I found that wearing glasses was not actually a good thing for protection, because all it was doing was introducing a piece of glass and metal right next to my eye when I don't have the depth perception to block the ball that's going to hit me in the face, but the ball is generally going to be softer. That being said, I think nowadays, the push for wearing safety glasses or glasses for protection is a lot easier to make because of the glasses, the materials that we've got. I've seen the kids that are wearing those silicone glasses that don't have any of those sharp objects. I mean, that is something that I think, should be recommended, because those eliminate that problem. But I know as a kid, that was a conversation I had, and I'd be curious to know if anybody else still wears them. I will put them on now when I'm doing things that are more dangerous than average, only because of the fact that if I have an accident, I've only got one eye to lose. but I don't necessarily know. I would love to know what other people think, because that have been a little bit younger than me, that may have grown up with that different eyeglasses available.
So I'm someone who needs glasses both for vision and for protection. I was kind of raised that, you know, you have only one eye, and that's extremely valuable, and we need to protect that. So part of my experience was getting to pick whatever glasses that I wanted, that I thought were cool, and that was always part of my look, and that was something that I kind of embraced as part of my, you know, my outfit and who I was, is like someone who has really cool glasses frames. So I think, you know, kind of encouraging your kids, if you are a parent, to like choose whatever glasses you think are really cool and have lots of different options. If you're like feeling a different vibe a different day, can make that experience like way more fun and you know, and involved for the child to be able to be part of that that experience, and to be able to have your own input into it. I think was something that was really valuable for me. I you know, previously mentioned that like I did wear, you know, sports goggles for sports, and now at this point I don't really wear those anymore. I just wear, you know, glasses with like there's special material, I forget what it is, but that I always have all of my frames made with and all of my lenses made with, just as extra protection. And I've always just had it be part of my vibe and part of my style, is getting to pick really cool glasses.
I think it's called polycarbonate lenses. Yeah. Yes, I have 2 pairs. They're one's in the room, one's at home. I definitely was encouraged to wear glasses, but once I became probably high school age, it wasn't cool, and I didn't want to. But as an adult, I've re-embraced it. Probably different than some of the panel members. I was and am the athlete up here. So I played varsity volleyball. So depth perception was always a challenge, but somehow my brain figured it out, and it was a big part of my life. So sports has always been a big aspect for identity and self-empowerment and all of those things. So I actually take off my glasses to wear sport because I don't see as well with them on. So I take them off to do more concise vision, but I do wear them for protection. And I do believe that it's important to encourage the kids to wear them. It's a common discussion within our adult survivor group that it is a large fear for those of us with one remaining eye, that eye will be impacted and we will then be blind. So it is a common discussion that we have. So I think that we should encourage them to wear it. And one strategy that we often suggest, because I know along with glasses, patching is a challenge for many parents. We and I often suggest that the parents, children love to mirror. So the parents wear the same thing. They wear the novelty glasses, they wear the novelty patch right along with the child, and it becomes a family endeavor rather than this is on you. Maybe that would help.
Joseph, I have a 4-year-old with a prosthetic and don't get to ask people questions about it very often. Cool. So I have a general question. My daughter would like us to kind of like ignore cleaning it and putting eye drops in. What is the discomfort? Like, do you put more eye drops in when it's windy? Do you have certain fabrics that feel better than others? Do you guys have any like general tips? Because she'll never admit that she's uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. I think we all probably know the morning crusties struggle with having a prosthetic eye. That's, I feel like, very real. Every morning I have to go in and make sure to like, you know, clean up what I kind of accumulate overnight. And you can definitely, I feel like I can tell when I'm getting sick or when I've recently been sick. I get a lot more like discharge. But I've kind of learned how to, take my eye out and clean it myself. And keeping it really moist, I think, can really help with like the buildup on the eye. Sorry, what?
Do you put eye drops in throughout the day?
Not every day. Definitely for me personally, like when I'm at work and I'm reading a lot of scans where I'm looking at a computer screen for like a lot of hours, my eyes can get really dry, so I can put eye drops in, when I'm feeling like my eyes are dry, and that kind of helps make it feel smoother and cleaner. But yeah, that's kind of how I tackle that.
I can also.
So similar. When I wake up in the morning, I sleep with my prosthetic eye, and similarly, depending on the weather plays a huge role. If it's winter time, the prosthetic eye will get really dry, so I would use either sustained eye drop, refreshed eye drop to keep it watery for the artificial tears. If I just took my prosthetic eye out because I, do want to clean it regularly, then it will feel uncomfortable to kind of put it all back in. But after a while, it's just something it's more discomfort than pain, especially as you get used to your prosthetic eye wants to have its own mucus and have its own emotions. Sometimes it'll look like I'm crying out of one eye versus the other one. So it just really depends on the environment, and it also depends on the type of eye drops you use to care for your prosthetic eye as well.
I put in drops.
I've had a bottle of eye drops in my right pants pocket for the past 20 years.
There you go. Yeah.
I put in like an oil drop that I was given to by my ocularist, and I put that in every night, especially when it's like drier. And then I like putting it in at night because then if you get like a little bit of oil like on like the eyelid or something, I feel like that can feel really noticeable if I do it like first thing in the mornings. But going to sleep, my eyes closed, it stays moisturized, and then like it's pretty good throughout the day. And then encouraging your child to clean their eye. I know it can be like really uncomfortable just to like take the prosthetic out, even just like emotionally, and it's just like it can be a lot. I guess like if it really needs it, like take it out and maybe clean it, but like just like encourage them to let you know if it's starting to get uncomfortable, or just let them know that it's always an option. And then I think over time they'll probably get comfortable and like be ready to more so maybe take it out on their own and clean it. That may be what I would recommend.
I kind of have a twofold answer to this. For one, I learned as an adult that it is actually better for us to not take the eye out as frequently because we have natural oils that build up in and around the eye. So the more we take it out and wash it, the more the body thinks that you're putting back in a foreign object, and then it creates more discharge. So once I stopped taking mine out every day, then it actually stopped spontaneously tearing and having as much discharge. So that was one point that I learned as an adult, and maybe that doesn't speak for everybody, that was my experience. And the other piece is that as kids, we touch everything. They touch everything. So I had so many infections as a kid to the point that my body became resistant to a lot of antibiotics. And we ended up going with a lot of different styles, and as a kid, we get a lot of infections, but now as an adult, it's not the same. So hopefully as she grows, she will touch it less and touch all the things less and understand that it's something that she'll need to monitor and be more aware of. And hopefully those challenges and discharge and the extras become less and less, and her body will adjust.
All right, I think we are out of time for the panel. So thank you everyone for your questions. If there's any other questions after, I'm sure any of us would be willing to talk and answer them. But thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to be clear, even though I'm not there, please feel free to reach out to me through Marissa.
Can you say that again?
Oh, sorry. I was just saying, I apologize since I can't be there, but if anybody wants to reach out to me, Marissa Gonzalez has my information. I have no problem with anybody having it. If you're a parent, a survivor, or somebody who's attending, I would love to be meeting and hanging out with you all, but it was an honor to get to speak with you guys. And I hope something I said mattered to somebody.
Thanks, DJ.
Thank you.